For our educational session, our one and only speaker of the evening will be Denise Grosse. Denise will be speaking out of the Persuasive Influence Pathway, Level 1, Project 2. And the title of her speech will be A Global Pandemic Toolbox. The speech length again is 5 to 7 minutes. The purpose of this project is to present a speech on any topic, receive feedback, and apply the feedback to a second speech. The subject of her speech is surprising discoveries of how challenging times we like to forget have equipped us to handle our first global pandemic. Let us welcome Denise Grosse.
Good evening, fellow helmsmen and guests. Maybe about 3 months ago, I found myself thrust into my very first global pandemic. You too, right? Surprisingly, I don't have any family members or friends who have previous experience with such an event. Nobody that I could reach out to ask for ways to get through it or give me some tools on how to cope with some of the challenges I was facing. Very quickly, I discovered that one of the negative sides of the pandemic, which meant I couldn't go out and socialize with my friends and go to restaurants and go to bars, provided me with the time to start to think about memories. And it took me all the way back almost 40 years to when my family moved from California to Connecticut. And while remembering that event, I came up with some tools I didn't realize I had developed in that course that can really help me now. Tonight, I'm going to share 3 of them with you in the hopes that it will inspire you to look back on the events of your life and maybe find some new tools you didn't know you had to help you get through this. When my family moved from California to Connecticut, we left California in August, 5 people, myself, my brother, my sister, my parents, a cat, 2 large suitcases of clothes, and a couple of backpacks of small personal items squeezed into a 1977 Ford Pinto with no air conditioning. We left California with $1,200 in cash, no credit cards, no savings. $500 of that was money I contributed from my first part-time job. We didn't know where in Connecticut we were going. We didn't know anybody in Connecticut. We had no jobs. And yet we left to go cross country to restart our lives. Looking back on that from this perspective, it's terrifying to think about somebody taking a family clear across country with a little more than $1,000 and expecting to survive. And yet here I am almost 40 years later. My brother and sister have been married. They have children. All 3 of us have graduate degrees. I've moved back to California. And I realized it doesn't matter how little you have, including toilet paper. Somehow you'll manage to survive. The second thing I remembered was as we were driving across the country, we had to, of course, cross the Rocky Mountains. And with the small car we had and all the stuff we had in the car, clearly that was a challenge. As we're making our way up a hill one day, really slow, suddenly a bee entered the car. Now, I'm allergic to bees, like terrifyingly, deathly allergic to bees. Of course, I screamed. Immediately, my father pulled over to the side of the road and we leaped out of the car and tried to sort of encourage the bee to get out of the car. And then we dove back in and closed the doors and rolled the windows up. Now we were on a hill in a tiny little Pinto and we needed to get to the top of that mountain from a dead stop. We started, it was terrifyingly slow. Tumbleweeds could have passed us by faster than it took us to finally get underway and get going. But eventually we crested the top of that mountain. And looking back on that now, it occurs to me, we might not know when this pandemic will be over, but every single day that passes, we're closer to it being over. It doesn't matter how slow that progress is, it's still progress. The third tool I discovered in my toolbox, we were going through Nebraska, which at the time was corn and cow country. And it was hot because it was August. We had the windows up, but we had like the vent on, bringing cool air in the car, or as cool as we could get. And as we go through one particular patch where there was this huge ranch full of cows, I don't know if you know this, but they stink bad when it's hot and there's a lot of them. And we were going to a town, and I may not pronounce this right, but the sign on the side of the road to us, we decided to have fun with, looked like we were going through Ogallala, Nebraska. And as soon as we hit that, the smell was so overwhelming, we started saying, Ogallala, Ogallala. And at that exact moment, my mother rolled down the car window. Mom, what are you doing? You're letting it in. No, I'm letting the smell out. Of course, we were in hysterical laughter over the fact about whether the smell was coming in or going out, and we were in Ogallala, Nebraska. And ever since then, in my family, when something smells really bad, we call it Ogallala. The lesson here for the pandemic is, no matter what situation you're in, you can always find moments of lightness and humor that will help lift your spirits to get you through it. I was very happy when I realized that things that had happened almost 40 years ago that I didn't even remember at the time were building up a toolbox of emotional and psychological tools that could help me now in this pandemic. I encourage you to take a few moments, since we have extra time, turn off Netflix and think back to your past and some of your experiences, and try to put a new twist on some of those experiences and bring them to the present, because they will help you get through this pandemic. Nothing stays the same, and eventually it will be over too. Madam Toastmaster.
If you like this video, please check us out on meetup.com and search for Helmsman770. You can also find us on the other social medias such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Please come on by. We'll be happy to see you again. Thanks.